Good evening and welcome to our nightly edition of Just the News, where we'll give you the news old school style with no outrage, no emotion, no opinion, just a wrap of everything that's happened today. Let's get straight to it. Our first story is about the Prime Minister's visit to Bangladesh. PM Modi is in Bangladesh for the celebration of the 50th year of the liberation of Bangladesh from Pakistan and the centenary celebration of its founder, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Premier Sheikh Hasina's father. Now, this is his first foreign tour since the COVID lockdown was announced in India. The two countries are also celebrating 50 years of establishment of diplomatic ties. In Dhaka, the Prime Minister was received by PM Hasina at the airport and he paid tribute to the National Martyrs Memorial at Savar. Ahead of his visit, though, there were protests in Dhaka. Students, mostly hundreds of them, protested against the visit. The police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowd, and at least 33 people were arrested. Let's take a look at the COVID numbers right now. There's some bad news. India has reported 59,118 cases in the last 24 hours. Maharashtra remains the worst affected with over 35,000 cases and 111 deaths in the last 24 hours alone. Mumbai reported over 5,500 cases. Now, this is the important news. The Maharashtra government has announced a night curfew in the entire state in order to bring down the instances on the spread of COVID-19. This will start on the 28th of March. That is Sunday. There will be a night curfew that begins in the entire state of Maharashtra. Apart from this, there have been fresh guidelines and precautionary measures issued mostly for the healthcare sector to keep their systems ready, oxygen tanks and cylinders to remain full at all times. They've also said that all beds allocations in dedicated COVID health centers and COVID hospitals to be based on the clinical conditions of the patient, and patients who have recovered or asymptomatic or have had no fever or cough for 3 consecutive days, or if their oxygen saturation is 95%, they are to be shifted to COVID care centers and not be kept in hospitals. They've also said that staff involved in vaccination will be kept separate from those involved in surveillance and containment operations. Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar has said there will be no lockdown in Pune as of now, but there will be certain restrictions. The decision of the lockdown, he said, will be held in the next meeting of the task force on the 2nd of April. He also said the closure of schools and colleges would be extended to the 30th of April. Pune is witnessing more than 6,000 new cases every day. A fire broke out in the Sunrise Hospital in Mumbai's Bhandup area, which houses COVID patients. At least 10 patients who were on the ventilator have lost their lives because of the fire. The Times of India have reported that the fire department has served notices to the mall in which this hospital was situated on the 3rd floor for deficiencies in complying with safety measures. The BMC, according to the Times of India, had given this hospital a provisional occupation certificate last year when it was trying to increase the number of beds it needed for COVID capacity in the city. Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has apologized to the family members of those who died in the fire. He said, and I quote, "Action will be taken against those found responsible. Compensation will be given to families of the deceased. I offer my condolences and apologies to those families." 5 lakh compensation has been announced for the family members of those who died in that fire. Army Chief General M.M. Naravne has said that the line of control between India and Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir has been silent for the first time in 5 to 6 years. Not a single shot was fired in the month of March. The Army Chief, who was speaking at the India Economic Conclave, said the terror infrastructure, including terrorist launch pads on the Pakistani side, remained intact. He also asserted that it cannot be business as usual unless the neighboring countries stop supporting terrorism. Saying that he's optimistic that the ceasefire will hold, he said it's the first time in 5 or 6 years, though, that the LOC has been silent, and it bodes really well for the future. Taking a look now at all of the news coming in from the world of business. A massive win for Ratan Tata and Tata Sons. The Supreme Court today backed the removal of Cyrus Mistry as chairman of the Tata Group back in 2016 and set aside the company law tribunal order that reinstated him. Now, the bench headed by Chief Justice S.A. Bobde said the decision to remove Cyrus was right and all questions of law are in favor of the Tata Group. Now, just to give you a background, in October back in 2016, Mistry was removed from his post as the chairperson and director of the Tata Sons by the board. He approached the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal in December, which then restored him as the executive of the conglomerate and ordered that order was then challenged by the Tatas. The Supreme Court has scrapped that order. Tweeting about the verdict, Ratan Tata said it's not an issue of winning or losing. He said, and I quote, "After relentless attacks on my integrity and the ethical conduct of the group, the judgment upholding Tata Sons is a validation of the values and ethics that have always been guiding the principles of the group," end quote. This verdict is likely to ease the process of separation of the two family groups, which have been together now for 70 years. The International Monetary Fund spokesperson Jerry Rice has been quoted by the PTI saying that India's economy is on the path of gradual recovery in real GDP growth and return to the positive territory for the fourth quarter of 2020. He said it's the first time actually since the start of the pandemic, and it's supported by a pickup in gross and fixed capital formation. Although he pointed out that the recent localized lockdowns and spikes in COVID cases could pose a risk to sustained recovery. Remember, RBI Governor Shaktikant Das also expressed concern about the resurgence of COVID infections. The Securities Exchange Board, SEBI, on Thursday has approved relaxation of existing norms to allow startups to now list on the stock exchange in a simpler sort of way. Now, what SEBI has done, and I'll take you through some of it, but it's a little complicated, it has reduced the time that early stage investors have to hold 25% of pre-issue capital from 2 years to 1 year, allowing IPO bound startups to allocate 60% of the issue size to any eligible investor with a lock-in of 30 days of such shares. Until now, startups were banned from making any discretionary allotment. They've also eased a few other norms, but fundamentally, according to the Economic Times, this will help startups access the capital markets, and it will make it slightly easier for them to do so. Let's take a look at news coming in right now from around the world. News from Nepal. In order to boost tourism, Nepal has announced that foreign tourists who've completed their vaccination process will not need to be quarantined when they enter the country. They'll have to submit their negative COVID test of 72 hours before travel, along with documents proving that they've received both doses of the vaccination. In Germany, the health ministry has said the people flying to Germany will be required to take a COVID test before departure, and airlines will only allow passengers who have a negative COVID test to board the aircraft. The new measure will come into effect on Sunday, the 28th of March, and last until the middle of the month of May. Also, some interesting news coming in from the world of science and technology. The Event Horizon Telescope has revealed magnetic fields around the supermassive black hole in the galaxy M87. This 55 million light years from the Earth is the first ever black hole with visual representation. I could look at that all day. It's really cool. The first image of the black hole and its shadow were released back in 2019. The new image shows the cosmic body in polarized light. Analyzing how the light around the black hole is polarized allowed astronomers a sharper view and the ability to map the magnetic field lines near its inner edge. I'll give you a moment there with that photograph. Moving on now. All right, let's take a look at news coming in from the world of sports right now. We're looking at the ODI between India and England that is currently on as we speak. Rahul has broken his negative streak and he has scored 100. This is his fifth ODI 100 from international ODIs, and it was scored off just 108 balls in the 44th over of the innings. Apart from Rahul, Virat Kohli scored 66 of 79. Rishabh Pant scored a quick-fire 77 of 40 balls, smashing 3 fours and 7 sixes. Let's take a look now at the Tokyo Olympics. After a year of delay, remember the Olympics were put off because of the COVID lockdown and the outbreak. The Tokyo Olympics torch rally began yesterday at Fukushima. You'll remember that name, Fukushima, because it was the base of operations responding to the 2011 nuclear disaster in Japan. The flame will be carried by 10,000 runners and will pass through all of Japan's 47 prefectures or regions before it reaches Tokyo for the opening of the games on the 23rd of July. This is the first time in the history of the games that overseas spectators are barred from the games. Also, on to football. Former Arsenal and French striker Thierry has said he's quitting social media because of racism and bullying across platforms. He said, "From tomorrow morning, I will be removing myself from social media until people in power are able to regulate their platforms with the same vigor and ferocity that they currently do when you infringe on copyright," end quote. He also said the sheer volume of racism, bullying, and resulting mental torture to individuals is too toxic to ignore. Leaving you with one piece of positive news before we wrap up this bulletin. According to a study published by the American Journal of OBGYN, Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are effective and safe for pregnant and lactating women. The study included 84 pregnant women, 34 lactating, and 16 women who were not pregnant. The study shows that the antibody levels were similar in all three groups. It also found that the babies developed high levels of disease-fighting antibodies. This is critical to determine, as pregnant women weren't included in the initial vaccine trials. In the meantime, Moderna is doing 2 studies on children to find out if the vaccine is effective on children in the US and Canada. The pediatric study with 6,750 children between the ages of 6 months and 11 years, and a second study with children of the ages 12 to 17 have 3,000 children in it, and the results may be available by the summer. That's a wrap on the news from me this evening. Thank you so much for watching. A couple of things. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It will help support us. Share this video with anyone you think will find just plain and healthy news useful. And of course, leave us a comment if there's anything we can do to improve this broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a nice day.